All right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you everybody who joined us today. Welcome to the chat. Today's webinar, we're going to discuss AI, automation, and deep learning in finance, and see how this plays out in real-world AI applications. And finally, we'll conclude with questions. If you have questions along the way, just please go ahead and put them in the Q&A window at any time, and we'll address those at the end. So to start us off, let's just go ahead and introduce ourselves. AJ, would you like to go first?
Yes, Lee, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining this webinar. It's another AI webinar. Hopefully, we add value and we create something that you can take back and apply to your businesses. Yep, I'm AJ. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ezyCollect. I'm dialing in today from sunny Sydney, so it's early morning here. And my background is I started ezyCollect because I ran a wholesale and manufacturing business myself before starting ezyCollect. And in that previous business, I was very much on the coalface, growing a business and experiencing the pain of not getting paid on time. I hired lots of people to solve the problem. I did a lot of band-aid solutions like finance, and I really kind of struggled to get paid on time. And when I sold that business, it got me thinking, how do we fix this problem for other businesses? So ezyCollect is really a labor of love, Lee, and it's focused on helping businesses to get paid on time. And talking today is really about, I think, just sharing that journey over the last 10 years, how that landscape has changed, and in a very practical sense, on how we can, apply some of the more recent changes to getting paid faster. Lee, I guess you're the other side of the coin. Did you want to talk about the accounts payable side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, appreciate it. And thanks everybody for joining us. I'm Lee Jacobs. I am the head of product at SquareWorks. SquareWorks makes the mirror image of what ezyCollect handles. And so we're on the accounts payable side. My personal background has been in the payments and finance space. So I've led product teams both on the consumer payments as well as kind of going now into the depths of the accounts payable B2B payments in the broader AP automation suite. SquareWorks got started in 2016. We actually started off kind of in a similar fashion in a consultancy manner, where we were working with finance and accounting teams implementing NetSuite, doing implementations and optimizations, and we saw similar pain points around the payables process from invoice capture to the actual completion of payments. And as we were building out our book of clients for implementations, we began developing widgets, and those widgets turned into products. And now SquareWorks is an end-to-end AP automation solution. So I joined the company just about a year ago, and really focused on kind of where we take our strategic development when it comes to the end-to-end AP automation solution. So I think to get started, I think everyone would agree that AI is making a huge impact in all of our daily lives, both professional and personal. And we'd like to explain a little bit about the history of AI as it pertains to accounts payable and accounts receivable. So AJ, can you tell us a little about the history of data generation as it pertains to AR teams before AI, the present, where we are today, and then some of the ideas of what the future may hold for us?
Yeah, and I think just for everyone's benefit, I want to talk very practically with lots of examples because AI is such a, commonly used term, and I don't want to just talk about AI, what you can hear in the news, what you can read. It's kind of really going deeper on that domain of accounts receivable and accounts payable. And for me, my personal experience, I'm not an AI expert, I'll just say it right now, but I understand and I can see how the technology is changing. And the biggest emerging trend that we're seeing is the insights that businesses can get from the raw data um, in your AR or ERP systems, and it's what I would say moving from a reactive to a proactive collection state. And there's huge amounts of data that's being generated by your ERP or by your accounts receivable system when you chase a customer, when someone pays you. Um, in the past or in the present, it's been harder to take that data and surface that to you as a business. But what we're seeing with the emergence of language models, there's a lot of businesses that are adapting their user interfaces to query large amounts of data and surface that in a very proactive way. So from an ezyCollect or an AR context, it's not just telling you, hey, you've got a late debtor and they're 30 days late and you've got this aging report, but now what you're able to do is get insights into not that someone's late, but why are they late? Like what's the root cause of the behavior of them being late? And then actually giving you some tips on what you can do about it. So I think we're moving in terms of this timeline from just, hey, let's chase a customer that's late and send them an email or a text or a WhatsApp message to saying, okay, let's go deeper beyond that and drive better conversations with our customer as to why someone is late. And with a kind of like very practical example of how we apply that, at least from an ezyCollect context, but this is not limited to ezyCollect, is we try and look at segmenting customers based on, of course, how late they're paying you. So, we have that data that, hey, Lee is paying you 25 days late. But now what we can do using language models and the tools available to synthesize data more effectively is we can say, hey, Lee's paying me late as I'm the business, but let's do some more analysis about Lee. For example, we can see that Lee is paying other suppliers on time. We've got data points we can quickly query now in a more cost-effective, more efficient way. We can use data sources from third parties like credit reporting bureaus or trade bureaus. So we can bring in credit data. We can start to query publicly available information through, say, Google and Reddit. And then we can start saying, hey, you know what? Lee is actually a relationship issue kind of customer because he's paying you late, but he's paying the rest of the market on time. Right. And if I know that, Lee, sorry for picking on you here, I see you smiling.
Thanks such
And
a deadbeat.
and because I can see that you are not a bad payer, like you actually have the money, but you're just paying me late. The why is why you paying me late. So when I call you to chase that payment, because the emails probably won't work, right? Then I can say, hey Lee, look, can we make it you on a payment plan? Perhaps ask you directly, I'm seeing that you're paying us late, but you have a really good credit rating. What's the reason? So you're going deeper into the conversations. So I think we are in this emerging phase where we can really get more predictive on the data. And in the future, which is I think still a fair way away, it's really about saying how can we hand that off to a bot as such. But I have a different view on bots. We'll discuss that in the next section. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what we're seeing at a really high level with a real practical example that we're actually implementing in our system today. Lee, are you kind of seeing? I'd love to hear your thoughts from an AP point of view, what you're seeing.
Yeah, and I'll try to stick with the example too, with Lee being the accounts payable team over here paying AJ on the receivable side. So
Yeah.
I think that's actually a really good example, and I also like to kind of keep things more tangible. So on the AP side, let's say like I am the AP team for Lee's company, and you see we tend to pay all of our other vendors on time and pay you late. Well, turns out like the reality is you're sending your invoice to a department head, like rather than directly to our AP team. And really within the AP organization, like in the best case, they're also looking at their main KPI just being the percentage of vendors they're paying on time, but not a whole lot of ability to apply either business intelligence or artificial intelligence like on top of that data. And so the evolution you talked about from being reactive to proactive is the same exact thing we're focused on the AP side. Now, for most AP teams, at least in the United States, like the process has not changed very much in really like the past 30 years. I like to say that the biggest evolution in accounts payable in that time frame has really just been the movement from a paper invoice to a PDF. And so paper invoices, now PDFs coming in, being copied and pasted into an ERP, and then approvals go out, payment batches are approved, and checks are printed. Um, But what's cool with AI that we're applying on the AP side is now we can take more of a proactive approach to AP, ensuring not only we're paying on time, but we're optimizing our cash flow and we're paying attention to more impactful KPIs, both like invoice cycle times as well as like your days payable outstanding, so we can focus on cash flow, which kind of matches the exact flip side with the receivables as well. So at present, when we talk about AI-enabled automation, really what we're talking about is kind of making the AP job a little more tolerable, like taking these bad jobs and making them a little bit easier. But what we see on the emerging front is not just the extraction of data and intelligent mapping of data, but more of a predictive and descriptive analytics approach, so that we can begin taking data and applying large language models and artificial intelligence to map that data to the correct fields proactively based on kind of historical use cases that we have access to in the ERP. And as we get into the future looking, where we start talking about agentic AI, that's where we really start talking about changing that job entirely. So not just taking a bad job and making it a little less tolerable, but actually like replacing that specific task as part of the workflow so that humans can focus more on the strategic side of their job, while machines do the parts that they do well, looking at historical data and predicting the way that job should be performed. I think one of the really interesting things when we start talking about agentic AI as well is like how agents can be whether either a standalone solution or more impactful when embedded within existing software user experiences. And I think that's one of the cool things about both ezyCollect and SquareWorks being a native NetSuite suite apps, right? So that experience is embedded within the system you're already using, so it actually makes that workflow just completely revolutionized rather than adding another piece into your tech stack. AJ, like, what do you think? Like, what's the future for agents as far as like the user experience?
Yeah, it's a tough one, Lee, because agents are, I think they have their application as an operational efficiency for a
Mhm.
business, so they can be used to help a team internally. I'm a bit worried about exposing agents to the end customer. So if you're a accounts receivables officer, uh, agents has a place to perhaps help you get insights. But would you let
Yeah,
an agent communicate with your customer? I don't think
yeah.
it's like there yet, and I don't know if you want it to be there in the next 10 years either.
So yeah,
We'll talk about that probably in the next section a bit more as well.
yeah. Absolutely. I think it's a good segue to our next section, actually. So, first to our audience, we want to get your feedback with our first poll question. What is your biggest challenge with your AR or AP processes? So we got the poll up here in real time. Go ahead and we'll give it a moment for some of the votes to come in. All right, give it 10 more seconds maybe before we close the poll out. All right, last call for the poll. All right. Yeah, and so looks like 33% said managing overdue payments on the AR side and 67% processing invoices manually on the AP side. Um, I mean, no surprises there. I think that the manual nature, like I mentioned on the AP side, how things haven't changed for most businesses over the past 30 years, hardly at all. Makes the job just really tedious, and a lot of hours put into something that machines can perform a lot more efficiently and accurately. AJ on the AR side, like any surprises?
No, I mean, look, I think it's a problem that, like you said, has been there for the last 30 years, and yeah, it makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, totally. Well, so let's jump into some real world examples then, on how AI is revolutionizing business workflows. So, AJ, can you give us some examples of how AI has changed the business workflow for finance professionals?
Yeah, so look, again, I think it's really important to give you practical examples here. I don't want to talk too theoretically. What we're seeing is really two big trends when it comes to automation in at least AR workflows, and Lee, of course, you'll talk about AP. Um, The first one I'll talk is about what I call hyper personalization. And the second one is about what I call human in the loop automation. So let's talk about the first one, which is hyper personalization. And what again, this is driven by the value of the data that's stored in your systems and being able to now mine that data effectively, expose it through user design, user interfaces that are now more accessible to dig into that data. So for example, right, we capture a lot of data in ezyCollect on how a debtor pays. So for example, we know that say Lee, again, is our debtor. He paid on a Tuesday. He paid 25 days late. He paid by his American Express card. He paid a surcharge. It was raining outside on the day he paid. The day happened to maybe be, let's say, a weekend, for example, and he paid at 10 o'clock at night. So perhaps, we can now start to say, how do we infer, based on this data, a bit more about Lee? Maybe Lee paid at 10 o'clock at night because he has kids, and he put the kids to bed, and he does his banking or his payments after hours. So that could be an inference that AI can help surface because it's just looking at the data and it's not super smart, but it's looking at trends, right? AI is looking at simply or machine learning in this respect, merging it together is helping us get a profile of who Lee is. So that hyper personalization allows us to now have workflows that can be tailored not to the generic, hey, someone's 10 days overdue, let me send them an email. But in this perfect world, it can be, let me send them an email, but I know the email should only go out at 9 o'clock because Lee will not look at emails before then. And I should offer Lee perhaps to waive the surcharge on American Express because I know that's what he prefers. And if I waive that surcharge on the credit card, maybe he'll pay faster, be more inclined to pay, right? And so you can start to automate a lot of those tasks and improve your collection rates by just getting more personalized and really automating that process. But the other big trend or the future state that I'm seeing, especially in B2B collections, which is business to business collections, is the second point I made, which is the human in the loop automation. Human in the loop to me is a very personal thing. Like, running my previous business, I know that collecting money is not just about chasing customers, but it's also about having a relationship with your customer and making sure you don't ruin it by chasing too hard or ignoring that personal touch. So I think even to the far future, when you have these agentic bots running around the place, the business that are going to succeed, uh, unless you're talking bot to bot and there are no humans left in the world, I think having a human in the loop is really, really key. Where at some point in that automation workflow, there's going to be a point where it'll schedule a task for Sarah to call Lee, right? Using the data that she has on her side to have a conversation with human to human, right? And I think that is something which can get lost. There's a lot of AI only companies emerging saying, hey, we'll help you automate your whole AI process using AI. I think that is fraught with pain and it's not going to work in the long term because you'll ruin your relationships, which will impact sales, and you won't have money to collect because your customers will be like, "Hey, this is not a real person. I'm going to ignore this." I think it's a really um, deeper conversation, Lee, that we could have on this. But to me, yes, you can get personalized with AI. That's part of it. Another one is humans are not going anywhere. I mean, what do you think, Lee? You think does it apply
Yeah. Yeah,
to you?
no, yeah, it totally applies. I really like the term or the phrase human in the loop automation and taking that same example with Sarah calling Lee about the status of a receivable. On the payables side, we have the same concern with managing vendor relationships, particularly strategic vendor relationships. And so, a lot of AP professionals have like personal relationships or significant strategic relationships they've built with some of their strategic vendors. And so our goal is not to remove the human from that loop, but rather to augment the human with one with more easily accessible data and information at their fingertips, and two is to reduce the need for inquiries by improving the job and the cycle so that there's less need for for a supplier to reach out to that AP team to inquire about the status of their invoice payments. So as we see the current state, particularly as we're thinking about businesses that are scaling, scaling the volume of their payables, finance teams end up creating hundreds of Excel spreadsheets and implementing workarounds in their ERPs that tend to be rather inflexible. And ultimately, they rely on error-prone manual processes. And so there are tools out there today that will partially automate the workflows, but those existing tools tend to be rather rigid. They're not easily configurable or good for managing exceptions, right? So they'll automate processes in a very standard way, and as long as everything kind of fits directly into the box, into the standard format, it works well. But any of the exceptions, the system starts to break down. It requires like a huge amount of effort from those AP teams. So as we think about like how we keep humans in the loop with the automation process, what we're really moving toward is touchless workflows for AP. So what we've done at SquareWorks, at least, is we've focused on like how do we map out the end-to-end job of the AP professional, and we've actually like put every step in the process from logging into your ERP to navigating to your bills inbox to scrolling through each of your individual invoices, your payables, to scheduling that batch of payments and releasing the batch of payments. And we've looked really tactically at those individual steps and said, like, what are the steps in this process that AI could really be applied to augment that AP team so that we're not taking them out of the loop, but we're completing jobs for them. And so, like I mentioned, like touchless invoice processing, for instance, we're not taking AP out of the invoice processing flow, but what we're looking at is if you have a vendor who you're receiving invoices from, on a daily basis or a weekly basis, and it tends to be within a specific amount historically, it's $5,000 to $10,000, and it matches a purchase order, there's no reason for a human to go in and review each one of those individual invoices as long as it's meeting kind of those risk adjusted criteria with a high degree of confidence. So that way the humans can become more involved just in exception management and also building those more strategic relationships with vendors and taking on the strategic tasks for implementing and optimizing their systems. So I think with this, naturally, of course, there are some fears that come around AI taking our jobs. But I think what we're seeing for finance is that it should be used to eliminate the bad processes and enabling our AP and AR professionals to take on more of a strategic role and outsource more of the tactical. So to our audience, for our next poll question, I want to put up the question, what inefficient processes would you like to replace within your workflow?
Yeah, I know, Lee, paying vendors is always something which can take a bunch of time. How do you look at like things around like payment fraud, and when you're paying vendors, have you guys thought about that much in terms of, am I paying the right bank details? Is that something that comes up much in your?
Yeah. I mean, one of the big challenges with faster payments, they say, is faster fraud, right? Like, the faster the payment happens, the less time you have to get it back. So you really have to be proactive about fraud prevention. So like, I mean, the easiest thing to do, like one is eliminating checks. Like if you're in the US, like checks are still rather prevalent, but eliminating those to the most extent possible. The second one we see is like the biggest best practice is to stop using email. Like business email compromise is the largest threat vector for B2B payments fraud. I'm sure on the receivable side, you probably have a similar viewpoint. Obviously, those teams are connected to that entire process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those things. Maybe it's the second webinar, Lee, payment fraud.
Yeah,
how to avoid it.
Yeah, there we go. I think we're working on one of those for a couple months from now. I might have to get you on that with us, AJ.
Done.
All right, so let's go ahead and end the poll here. Fairly even split between for today this second poll: chasing overdue payments manually on the AR side, manually entering and matching invoices on the AP side, and also following up on approvals for invoices and payments on the AP side. I guess as far as addressing the AP side, I think automation plays a great role, and like AI can play a great role in both of these, like the actual intelligent or the extraction of data and then intelligent mapping of invoice data into the ERP system, as well as approvals. Like kind of follow-up tasks and those workflow tasks that can be easily built into a system, but making those follow-ups more intelligent and kind of tailored to each individual business use case rather than more in an inflexible system. AJ, how about chasing overdue payments on the AR side?
Yeah, I think you've said it right. It's about making it more like flexible, right? I think that's what it comes down to, and very, very personalized.
Yeah,
That's what we need to get right.
yeah, totally. All right. So our last topic, taking it one last step, we're going to discuss how deep learning is revolutionizing finance. But first, let's just define what deep learning is. So deep learning would be a subset of machine learning, which is a subset of the broader category of artificial intelligence. So AI is any program that can sense, react, act, and adapt to its inputs. And machine learning, being a smaller subset of that, uses algorithms to learn from data and improves over time as it's exposed to more data. And then finally, as we look at deep learning, that's where we see some of the modern innovations within the category of AI that uses large neural networks to learn from complex patterns. And it's what really has enabled us to begin processing unstructured data like images, documents, and texts. So prior to deep learning, machine learning often required significant intervention from humans to train models based on structured data. Now we're able to really train models on the fly based on any type of data. And, herd data is really like kind of the limitation, the ceiling we have for AI today. So AJ, can you tell me how on the AR side, deep learning is revolutionizing the tech stack for AR professionals?
Yeah, this is a concept that starts getting quite technical, I guess. And at least from an ezyCollect point of view, we we're always fighting with keeping it quite real, meaning how do we help accounts professionals do the job in a way that's more and more effective. And this is, I think, where deep learning comes into it. It's keeping it simple from a user experience point of view, but providing more contextual understanding to the accounts uh, professional to really understand what's the right collection strategy for that individual. Right, and this is what we talked about previously as well. There's a word that people use as a co-pilot. I think it's a bit overused, but it kind of does describe where deep learning has a place, at least on an AR point of view. It becomes a silent partner that is giving the accounts professional a person on their shoulder that can give them some insight about the person they're talking to at a very real-time level, right? And so for us, the the deep learning context at ezyCollect is really about taking that deep data that you have in the systems, supplementing it with external data sources, because for us, that's the value, that we know a lot about your customer on how they're paying you, but how they're paying the rest of the market, who is Lee Jacobs, what else can I add to the data to help you go and make better decisions and have more intelligent conversations, on it with when you're talking to your data, but also using the system to then continuously improve its predictive capabilities, um, and even predict the cash flow that might come from Lee in the future. I talked about that example of that relationship issue when you have different credit scores for Lee, versus how he's actually paying a business, and then having that is one. The other one could be like Lee's. We see Lee's always part paying an invoice. He never pays a full invoice. Maybe there's an issue around cash flow for Lee, and when you give him a call next time, hey, let's get you on a payment plan. So an example is, and then making that very easy with like 2 clicks, right? Saying, hey, okay, I know Lee wants to be on a payment plan. He doesn't seem to be able to pay more than $1,000 at a time. So let me, next time I call Lee, I'm going to offer him a payment plan. And with 2 clicks, I'm able to then enable and execute a payment plan as well. So the deep learning is also A, how do I get the analysis? And then B, how do I have some actionable, without adding more work to me as an accounts professional, how do I have some actionable insights that I can then actually execute? And so for us, it's, I think, really cutting edge at the moment. Deep learning, it's a concept that's really cutting edge in this financial landscape. From an AI point of view, we focus on data and leveraging it internally as an operational tool. Lee, from an AP point of view, are you doing something similar?
Yeah, absolutely. On the AP side, I think what's most interesting is how like with AI we've kind of evolved from like more of it being used as like for fun and entertainment to like actually deriving insights out of our data and out of these out of the software solutions we have today and embedding it within those user experiences. And you know, the biggest thing, the biggest differentiator I see with like the evolutions and the recent evolutions in AI is just the availability and scalability of these solutions for all businesses. So now, rather than having to have a data science team or a vendor who would have projects, and kind of ongoing to train models for like these large enterprises, the AI solutions and these co-pilots we talk about, those silent partners, are available to any business, right? Embedded within the software solutions you have today. That's one of the things I think is really great. Is like these types of AI solutions are available to all of us. So I know we're almost out of time here. In fact, we're actually a minute over time, and I apologize. I guess AJ, you and I should we'll have to schedule another one to wrap things up. But I do want to thank everyone for connecting with us today. If there were any questions, or if you still have questions, just go ahead and put them in, and we can follow up on those via email. But I did want to thank you all and just say if you'd like to connect with us, we'll leave this slide up for just a moment so you can scan the QR codes for SquareWorks on the AP side and ezyCollect on the AR side. So AJ, it was great talking with you. I know it's very early in Australia. I'm sure a lot of folks didn't even realize it's like 5 a.m. there. I think 5:31, I guess.
Yes, thank you.
But
Thanks, Lee, for running the session as well. You did a great job moderating it.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate everyone who joined us today. And for those of you who joined us, we do have a participant giveaway. So we'll randomly select 4 of you and be reaching out to give away Apple AirTags. So the winners will be selected randomly and notified via email after the webinar. With that, I think we'll wrap up. So thanks again, AJ, and to our audience for joining us today.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, everybody.